Welcome back to the Zionist Education Initiative here at Nefesh B'Nefesh, where we get to discuss different Zionist ideas and values and look at Zionism from plenty of different perspectives, from left, right, and center. And today we'll be looking at it from David Ben-Gurion's perspective. Primarily, we'll start with him because it was his birthday just a couple days ago, October 16th. And so we'll look at Zionism through David Ben-Gurion's eyes. We'll take a look at a few of the different organizations he established, his many accomplishments over his tenure, not just as prime minister, but as a leader in Israel and the Zionist movement. And we'll look at the different methodology and the different values that he has put into just about everything that he did. So we'll start there. First and foremost, this movement that David Ben-Gurion built, this labor movement that still exists today, was very much in response to the lack of justice, the injustice, and the horrible working conditions that the Jewish people had during the Industrial Revolution. That the Jews were not able to climb out of just being the lowly members of society, lower class. They were never able to achieve that success, that prosperity. So David Ben-Gurion's perspective on Zionism was an opportunity and a cure to that injustice. It was a way of us getting out of that rut to create something really powerful through work, through becoming something, and through that we could become part of the working proletariat. If we created our own form of labor Zionism, as Ber Borchov, who's also one of the thought leaders of labor Zionism, put it, he said, the emancipation of the Jewish people either will be brought about by the Jewish labor or it will not be attained at all. But the labor movement has only one weapon at its command, the class struggle. Zionism can only be realized if proletarian Zionism can be realized. So as Ber Borchov in our platform in the early 1900s writes, this idea that the only way that the Jewish people are going to really create a name for themselves, become something more than just the lower class, is through work. And this is something David Ben-Gurion took on, and it's evident through his entire tenure. So that's going to be value number one. Hard work is a way of getting out and getting that justice, of achieving that prosperity. And that is what labor Zionism was. It was justice. It was justice being served for the Jewish people. So that's going to be number one. Number two is this, of all the movements that we'll point to. Now, most people will point to the kibbutz, this idea of a communist, socialist type of place. Everybody has a job. Everybody's treated equally. And a lot of people will point to that. I'd like to point to one other entity that David Ben-Gurion founded. It was in 1920, and that was the Histadrut. The Histadrut is not necessarily the easiest thing to translate, but it is a labor union. It was at the time, at its height, it was it employed, or wage earners were 80% of wage earners were connected to the Histadrut. Be it by Histadrut owns farms, construction companies, banks, you name it. The Histadrut did it, and they were a considerable part of the country's founding. Here you'll see David Ben-Gurion standing at the founding of the Histadrut in 1920, a young David Ben-Gurion. And it offered an opportunity for people to work, to contribute to the land, and really build a name for themselves through so many different ways. The Histadrut was incredibly diverse, and it was a way for everybody to get involved. And that's going to be level two. Our second value here is going to be the diversity, is understanding that Zionism isn't just one way. It's not just one way of doing things. Obviously, through labor Zionism, they believe through work, but it is ultimately through any way you see, and that was also the Haganah. The Haganah was just as the Jews need to work, the Jews need to fight, and that you'll see through this very, very socialist perspective. But this flyer right here is, you'll see the worker, the farmer, the soldier, and that is what labor Zionism stood for. It was built on those three pillars, straight out of Communist Manifesto. That's what it's built on. Work, you need farmers, you need workers, you need soldiers. The one thing that's interesting here is that you see a man pulling ships, and there is that component of aliyah, right? This idea of immigrants coming to the country, that we need to work hard bringing them here and to bring them back to their God-given land. So that is one component that you won't necessarily see in Russian propaganda or other posters of the sort. But that was certainly it, that were work-oriented. And this poster was also from the Mapai Party. Another amazing value here that we'll add here is that David Ben-Gurion unified all the left-wing parties under Mapai, under this one entity, and that was able to make it so much stronger. It was able to bring in people, even though they didn't see eye to eye on everything, the idea that they stood for the common values, the common core, and he brought everybody together under the same roof. Creating Mapai was an amazing feat for what the then early leader, who would then become prime minister. So that'll be our next value of unifying people like-minded, working together to build something more powerful. And that's what Zionism is throughout all of its different phases, as we'll get into different perspectives. But it is that unity, finding people of like-minded. Just one thing to see the power and the vision that David Ben-Gurion had. The Histadrut, while it is a labor union and represents, at its height, represented 80% of the country, now it represents closer to about 20% of the country, but they were instrumental in passing labor laws, giving free wages for men and women, child labor laws, you name it. That was very much through the Histadrut. So being that entity was a tremendous visionary moment for David Ben-Gurion and for the country, and kind of taking the Industrial Revolution for the Jewish people for the early Zionists was an amazing opportunity. We'll just get to this moment and back to this one picture of David Ben-Gurion at the founding. David Ben-Gurion was known for being present at so many founding moments. He was at the start of kibbutzim, at the Histadrut. Any new endeavor, David Ben-Gurion wanted to show his support. And just a lesson in leadership, but a lesson in Zionism, is that we're not just planning in an office and giving the plans off, but our leaders are often at the forefront. They're at the ribbon cutting ceremony before it was a ribbon cutting ceremony, to show the support, to show the vision coming to life. And David Ben-Gurion did not stop. He was at so many things, and he also adapted. As the Histadrut adapted, the Histadrut, this labor union, had multiple evolutions, and now it works very much with Social Security. It has a union for high tech. And cellular communications, and that's also it. David Ben-Gurion didn't think this is how it should be, but rather we should always be working, that key word being work, but always building forward. And just as we close out from this idea, but you saw that this movement, the Haganah, the left wing, labor Zionism, had a ton of support in the diaspora, and it wasn't. And a key component of Zionism was not just focusing on the people here, but focusing on the people everywhere. That the Haganah, they saw, the diaspora Jews saw the Haganah as fighting for them, that Jews around the world were always connected, and that was a key component, a key message that labor Zionists, the movement of David Ben-Gurion, always put out, that we're fighting for you, that this is also dependent on you. You can support it. It was Golda Meir who was a major part of the labor movement, and we'll get into her a little bit of another time, but who went back into the diaspora and told the diaspora that now was their time to do their part to help Israel survive. That it was the diaspora Jews who could stop another Holocaust from happening when we were getting into wars. So during the War of Independence in particular. So it was always building this connection. So that's going to be our final value here from David Ben-Gurion, from the labor movement, that it was an opportunity for everybody to get involved. It didn't matter if you were in Israel. Obviously, Aliyah was a considerable part of that. Building the state was a big part of that. But everybody's connected. Everybody was part of Israel, and that is where we'll end off. That was David Ben-Gurion's Zionism. It was working, building, contribution, always looking to the future, building forward, bringing everybody into it, and it's an amazing message that lasts to this day. Those are our Zionist values, and tune in next week for more Zionist values as we look at it from some other perspectives. Take care from the Zionist Education Initiative.